Hello, my name's Kevin Mulrennan, and I'm going to give a shortish report on the Kaleidoscope Pop event, which was held at the Mac Theatre on Saturday. A very well attended event and a very well organised event, organised by Kaleidoscope Television, who have been preserving TV and were based in the Midlands, based in Stourbridge and Birmingham and the surrounding areas, and have been going for decades now. Basically, we all gathered in the theatre there, and we had the programmes played to us on the big screen, and we had a very special guest and a very good guest as well in Ed Tempole Tudor. And I'll go through the programmes, the shows that were shown. I didn't take any notes. I'm just talking from memory, basically. So if I do get one or two things wrong, I do apologise. But you'll get the gist of the flavour and a few little facts about the various shows that were there. So the first show was called A Whole Scene Going, and that was a BBC show, a magazine type show with bits of pop music thrown in, and also kind of like discussions, answers to questions, and so forth. Two main presenters, there's Wendy Varnells and Barry Fantoni, and the guests on this particular occasion were Dudley Moore, Unit 4 Plus 2, who mined their latest single, their latest 45, Shirley Ann Field, who again answered questions from the panel. And there was a lot on Marianne Faithfull, who was both interviewed and also sang in the studio. And some very nice footage of her with her baby. I do hope her son has got to see that footage because it was very touching to see how much she loved her son and discussing him. And of course, there was Annie Nightingale, or Anne Nightingale, as she was referred to in the actual clips themselves, in the actual show itself. I've written a few notes about it. It was shortly after Valentine's Day, so the discussion for the panel was really dates, Valentine's, a teenage romance, basically. And the panel answered questions on, that was sent in by the viewers. And that was very interesting as well. Very interesting to see Dudley Moore talking very posh for a boy from Dagenham. And it was one did this, one did that. That was all very amusing. Shirley Ann Field gave some very poignant and very interesting answers as well. And there was also a scene about three parties. So there was three parties. There was one hosted by Anne or Annie Nightingale. There was one from some gentleman, very posh gentleman, who was quite comic, really, looking back to it. It was like a Harry Enfield character, Tim Nice but Dim, one of those kind of characters, and a working class young lady. And they showed the three parties. They started off with Anne's party, and she was explaining how she liked to play a lot of Tamla Motown. And we saw her scooting about the house, giving out drinks. There were people in the kitchen smoking and dancing and things like that. And she was explaining how she liked to get the party going. And it seemed a really interesting, jolly affair, the sort of one that you'd really want to go to. Lots of music being played, dancing, and so forth. They then cut to this gentleman, probably about 25, I imagine, and he was very, very posh, very rich, obviously, and he had a posh party in Belgravia. Who knows, it might have been the Sloane Club or somewhere like that. And it was a mixture of people, young and old. They're all smoking away. I mean, one of the things about the day was the amount of smoking that you saw was incredible, really. And there was no background music. He explained that it's because he liked to hear people chat, and he said, well, there's plenty of other opportunities to have parties where people can dance. And he was really interested in the conversation. And we saw him going from place to place and person to person, very, very posh, loads of champagne, and obviously spent a lot of money on the party itself. Then the third one was a working class girl somewhere in London and her friends, and they were having a bit of a, I suppose you'd say, knees up really. And it seemed to me that the best party of the lot really. It was fun, it was interesting, and she was very down to earth, very nice girl. And she was explaining how she liked some of the older records. Some of the old records being played, like the classic rock and roll sort of ones, to get people going and dancing. And yeah, you had butties on the side, sandwiches, pickled eggs. Everybody had a laugh, and there was one. I think one lady helped herself to the pickled eggs, and we all had a laugh by that, with pickled onions. And then they had all three of them in the studio together, sitting and discussing the parties, and they were discussing which was the best party. And they asked the posh bloke which one would he like to go to? And fair play to him, he diplomatically said that he'd like to go to both. So fair dues to him for doing that. He did mention that he'd rather speak at the party to Quentin Hogg, who I think was a Tory MP or whatever back in the day, some posh bloke, rather than Cathy McGowan. He's quite disparaging about Cathy McGowan. I think he called her an idiot at one stage. So Annie Nightingale, of course, who was good friends with Cathy McGowan, having worked on Reader Fusion on the shows, picked him up about that. And yeah, it's amazing how Annie Nightingale was very posh in the way she talked as well, different from what we're used to on the radio, on the Radio One with the late night shows and so on. Very, very beautiful lady as well, very, very attractive, and sort of that typical mid 60s that look, very, very nice. That was very interesting. Interesting amount of times in the program the word bird was mentioned. We're talking about the smoking being an anachronism. They always refer to the ladies as birds, so that always caused a lot of amusement in the hall, as it were, as well. So that was good. So as I say, Unit 4+2, Mind, a song. I presume it was their latest single. So it was interesting to see them. And Marianne gave a great interview. Very, very relaxed. She seemed very calm and seemed to be enjoying herself. And I really do hope her son gets to see that footage because it's very, very touching. And I noticed as well the panel. There was the same sort of people in the panel that you see in these surviving episodes of A Whole Scene Going. DJ Mike Quinn was there, and he asked Marianne a question about folk music. And he also appeared in the following programme, A Boy Called Donovan. So quite a bit of exposure to Mike Quinn, who was a big DJ back in the 60s, particularly in the clubs, and used to do a lot of records, a lot of playing of that. And so he was quite prominent on that. So a great show, really enjoyable. I'd never seen any of the footage; it was completely new to me. It had been, I presume, missing white for years. So it's great that we actually got to see that. So then we moved on to A Boy Called Donovan. Lovely print. They've got a lovely print of that, and they've married it with a audio from England. They got the print from Germany, I believe, and it's a great show. It's complete. It's got Donovan talking throughout with his songs, his poems. So there's no narrator apart from himself. There's no introduction. You just see him going about his business a few days. You see some Ives where he was spending some time with his friends down there. He's travelling along with Gypsy Dave, his best mate, and you see them at various places. You see them at one time on London Bridge, serenading all the bowler hatted people travelling to their work, and you see them, around St Ives on the beach and having a barbecuing fish at one stage. Beautiful songs. The songs remind me a lot of John Peel in his Perfume Garden because he was a huge fan of Donovan and he often played the songs, and quite a few of them I knew from listening to the Perfume Garden, and it was really, really good. Of course, we had the infamous marijuana smoking, the dodgy cigarette scenes on the beach, and Pilcher of the Yard, of course, saw that. And Donovan, unfortunately, was the first pop star to get busted by this corrupt cop, who basically Gypsy Dave let an undercover cop in, and then the undercover cop, having got the foot in the door, there was 9 officers or whatever came in, and they found enough marijuana to put Donovan in serious danger of getting jailed. But the Beatles came to his help, and eventually I think he was fined. But the footage was wonderful, lovely songs, brilliant. I really enjoyed that. Started off some great programs, and of course the Ready Steady Go footage, the rehearsals for that was brilliant. We've seen clips of that. I mean, I remember that from the Channel 4 repeats that Dave Clark did in the 1980s. But it was great to see that. I saw Sandy Sargent, the dancer, and I saw Cathy McGowan and Tony reckons the Sir Douglas Quintet were there as well. So again, we'll check on that. We'll see whether that was the actual precise lineup. We can look those things up from Andy Neal's brilliant book on Ready Steady Go. So about 12 songs, about a dozen songs, and it was really wonderful. I've actually been looking up A Boy Called Donovan. I've got a few press things that came about that I can put up at a later date. So that was really interesting. A great way to start the day. Then we had the show of the week, Dusty at the Talk of the Town. Originally in colour, but this is a black and white print. no start credits, no end credits, but it's in pretty good nick. The actual footage, black and white. It would have been absolutely amazing seeing colour, but a black and white copy needs a bit of attention, but hopefully that will be looked into. And yeah, Talk of the Town was a kind of cabaret show. Basically, Talk of the Town was a place in London. You could go there for a meal. You could see that there's an orchestra at the back and the people having a meal at the front. So you could go there, and it's sort of like you could go to an early evening show, a review, and then they clear the people out, probably get another set of waiters in, and then you'd have like a late night review. So a very popular um, place to be. I think I saw quite a few little famous people in the crowd during that. So I think Norma Tanega was there, relaxing at the front, having a meal, and that was interesting to see. So yeah, started off with a Shirley Temple tribute, the Good Ship Lollipop. Seeing tremendous fun dressing up as Shirley Temple. Dusty seemed relaxed and seemed to be really enjoying her performance. And she did quite a few songs. You Don't Have to Say You Love Me. She did a medley of Backrack and David songs, Wiser Lovers, What the World Needs Now, Wishing and Hoping, If You Go Away, and then different other songs there. I Close My Eyes and Count to 10, and then ended with a fun one, which I believe is I Want to Be a Movie Star. So that was comic skills at the fore there, and really really good to see that show. Makes you wonder how the hell did it survive? A black and white film copy. Presumably it's insiders from the BBC and so on that they occasionally ran off copies for friends, mates, collectors, or whatever. But absolutely fascinating and great to see. We're a huge fan of Dusty anyway, but to see stuff you'd never seen before, an immense joy. So hopefully that's not the last we've seen of that, and it gets onto DVD at some stage. Then we moved on to Rod the Mod, Acker, also known as An Easter with Rod. So this was great. This has been missing for ages and was found again, discovered about 2013. And I'd never seen it. It was down at Missing Believe White, but I don't tend to get to London these days, so it was great to have it here in Birmingham on my doorstep, as it were. And yeah, great to see that footage. Rod was relaxed and enjoying himself. Um, Broadcast quite late. I looked it up. It was broadcast apparently at 7 minutes past 11, 2nd November 1965. It looked complete to me. It said in the brochure that there's bits missing, whatever. But it looked it looking at the footage, it seemed fairly complete. I can remember the start credits, end credits, as it were. Great footage of Rod going around the various clubs. A lot of them, of course, sadly non-existent. Singing with Long John Baldry, Eel the Eel Pie Club, and all that kind of place. Nice footage of his flat above the newsagents, which his mum and dad um, ran. His mum and dad were great to see those. I love the mum, how she said, it was asked, well, what's Rod like or whatever. She said, oh, you probably see him more than me, obviously because he was busy and out late at night and didn't get up till all hours of the morning, as it were. And his dad was the tobacconist there. They ran that shop. I think it was very moving for Rod when obviously long since passed away, sadly, and it was very moving that he saw that. His dad, I thought his dad was Scottish. He spoke, sort of London Cockney sort of accent. So obviously his granddad must have been the real Scotsman in the family, as it were. Football was, of course, very prominent. His dad was an excellent footballer. We saw his elder brother, and we saw him playing football. And Rod explained how he'd had to knock the football on the head, as it were. He just played occasionally because of his commitment to and to the music. And yeah, great, lovely, lovely footage of him answering the questions, going about music, clothes, and performances at places like the Marquee. So thanks for showing that. It was me that suggested that it should be shown. I'm really glad they managed to get rights to that and show it. It was really really fascinating. I'm not a huge Rod Stewart fan. I quite like him, but that program was really really good, really excellent, and somebody who wasn't into that kind of music would still enjoy watching it. So let's see what else was next after that. Then we had a short little show. We had showcase paraphernalia. It was basically a little jazz show shown on TVS. couple of numbers. Barbara Thompson and John Heisman perform in this short filler that was only shown in the TBS region, TV South region, and that was transmitted 22nd of February 1983. So it's nice to see something from the 80s. There tends to be quite an 80s feel to this particular Cal Pop. Oh yeah, by the way, from Rothermod, I should have mentioned Long John Broadley a bit more. It was great to see him being interviewed, being so honest. He was refreshing. He was on about how he likes drinking whiskey and smoking and all that kind of stuff, and he's criticising the pop stars that pretended that they only had milk and honey and stuff like that. So that was quite funny along the way. So then we had the Max Headroom show, which I remember watching way back in the day in the 80s. It's seeing cutting edge technology then, the crude head, and it's easy program to make, I would imagine, apart from the animations, because just showed pop videos basically. So very 80s. Amazing what they could get away with back then. Really, they wouldn't get shown now. There was one of the videos was on about eating rats. It was a rat burger video. And you see it's quite graphic. You saw rats on the barbecue and pretending to eat them and all that. So very of its day, but a nice thing to see. A nice thing to see the different. Nice to see the Kinks, of course. I'm a huge Kinks fan, and they showed the video to do it again. So it was nice to be reminded of that. So then we had our lunch, a little break, and then we had a massive highlight, the Salute to Lou Gray, the 3 songs from John Lennon, one of which hasn't been seen since transmission. Introduced by quite a nervous, it seemed, Dave Allen, the comedian. Lots of things going on, lots of setup, and really, really good to see these songs. And Lennon seemed in great form. Me and Tony were discussing, well, why did he do it? It's bizarre, at that time. And I just suggested, well, maybe it's around the period of sort of the long lost weekends, and he'd split with Yoko and whatever. So maybe just was that a loose end, or maybe he just fancied, earning a bit of cash or whatever, and just decided to do it. So we'd have to do a bit of research on that to find out why. But yeah, the band was the BONF. I'll let you work out what that means. So I don't know how many of the people watching at home got that kind of little joke. So Slipping and Sliding, Stand By Me, and Imagine. So Stand By Me was not shown, Believe Lost, and Ray, our good friend Ray Langstone. Big up to Ray. Sorry you weren't there, mate. I was hoping you'd be there, but we'll see you next time. He tracked it down at the BFI, and it was absolutely brilliant to see that. Yeah. Then we went on to the Rolling Stones footage. So we saw footage of fans waiting for them, queuing up in 1982 in Aberdeen. Reminded me of 1987 when I just started work, 1987, 1986, around that time, at Lloyd's Bank in Colmore Row. And I saw an advertisement to get tickets for U2 at the NEC. So I turned up nice and early, I don't know, about 7:30, whatever, expecting I'd get into work, no problem at all. And of course, the queue just kept not going. And basically, I was supposed to be in work by 10 o'clock maximum on flexi time, and I didn't make it. But I was honest. I just went in and said, look, and they were very good to me. I didn't bus off or anything. I just said I was officially down as AWOL. But I got the tickets, took my sister to the concert, and it's an absolutely fantastic concert. So it was well worth it in the end. It reminded me of those guys queuing up for the Rolling Stones, and yeah, then you saw like them playing, a few little numbers of them playing in their 80s chic, as it were. So that was interesting to see that. Then we had the Stones also as well, on top of a building in Bristol, and a TWW news report. That was absolutely fascinating. Tony pointed out that it was referred to as Mike Jagger initially. So I suppose, like, the Rolling Stones are relatively new. We all know him as Mick or whatever. I think they corrected it later on. What the initial phrase was Mike Jagger, which amused us. Then we had a Radio Lux audio clip by Bob Monkhouse, and they were talking about various things and suits and things like that. No Bill Wyman for some reason. So that was put up with a load of stills, such as like the Bloodhound, suits that they use for Thank You Lucky Stars. So that was interesting. You know, always good to see stuff you never seen before with the Stones and so on. So it's thoroughly enjoyable. So that Western-super-Mare footage was shown on, or at least filmed, 25th of August 1964. So that was really good. Then we had our guest, Ed Tudor-Pole, very amusing guy, very relaxed, great banter with him and Chris Perry, and you can watch that video. It's up on the Kaleidoscope television site on Facebook. You can actually see that, and it was fascinating to hear his history, and he was plugging his book and did very well for himself. So that was great to see that. And talked about the Crystal Maze a little bit. I was a huge fan of the Crystal Maze, so it was great to hear that. And then we moved on to Pop 1968. So this was a European show. ORTF, who I think are an Austrian company, they showed this compilation from the Rome Pop Festival of 1968. So with the Rome Pop Festival of 1968, they were trying to emulate Monterey, you know, in American 67. So they booked various bands. And there's quite a lot of footage out there, but I hadn't seen a lot of this footage, particularly in the quality that we're talking about. And the whole festival was a bit of a disaster, really. They didn't sell many tickets, and they were letting people in for free at the end. And it was supposed to be for a week, and I think the Move kind of cancelled it after about 3 days because they started to blow things up, and the Italian police got a bit nervous and they closed the whole thing down. So it was an interesting festival, to say the least, because it was done during a heat wave in June in Rome, and so a lot of the footage you see, a lot of the performers, they look very hot indeed, and yeah, that might be one of the reasons why there wasn't that many, because it's held in a football stadium, or certainly a sports stadium, I think a football stadium, and that's one of the reasons I think that you know, it's an interesting thing to film. You see lots of shots of the audience who seem to be enjoying themselves. That was quite amusing seeing them. And there was a lot of, you know, a lot of it was staged. There was stage dancers, sort of groovy dancers that were provided some entertainment as well. So yeah, great footage, color footage, good quality, and the nice played, you know, from Emerson, Lake and Palmer. You have those kind of associations. And then you had the band, The Association, who looked very hot, American band, who looked very hot in their stage clothes. And then you had Donovan, who did a couple of very jazzy numbers, so it was great to see more Donovan. And I thought the double bass player looked like the bloke out of Pentangle, but we're not quite sure whether it was him. But it was very interesting. Normally associate folk, but it was more jazz really from Donovan, so that was really interesting. Then you had Brian Auger, the Trinity, and Julie Driscoll. That was amazing. I'm such a big fan of those, and they did some great songs. Wheels on Fire, mainly on the piano, which was interesting. You know, they had an organ by the side, and he leant over and did a little bit of that. And Julie Driscoll, of course, looks absolutely amazing. She's 78, wasn't she, recently, I think? Yeah, her birthday, last few days. And then you had the Pink Floyd, did a number as well. And 10 years after, I don't quite know whether I've got them in the right order there, but certainly those were the people that played. Normally one or two numbers from each. Be interesting to know whether whether the whole of the sets were actually filmed and how long they actually played for. There is other footage out there of people like the Byrds and so on. So it'd be interesting to know. I imagine probably it was only like the one or two numbers that survived that went for transmitted in pop shows that survived. I don't think they would have saved, unfortunately, all of the appearances. But you never know. You never know. But the there was a show in England called Release, and they showed bits and pieces from the Rome Pop Festival. I think they showed the Pink Floyd in full, and you know, them sort of Julie Driscoll and Brian Auger around markets and getting to the actual festival. Another problem with the festival as well was a lot of the bands didn't get there. There was travel problems, and it wasn't well publicised. You see footage of fans say, well, it wasn't well publicised. That's probably one of the reasons there wasn't as many people as there should have been there. So the show itself was interesting. There was no presenter. They just put up a screen which gave the name of the band, and then they cut straight to the footage of the band. So there was no linkage or DJs or things like that. But that was a really excellent show, which I really enjoyed. Then we had the compilation. Always traditional at Kaleidoscope events have a compilation, and some great things in that stuff I hadn't seen before. So yeah, Tom Robinson, One for the Road, interesting show that we'd all forgotten about really, kind of like a Radio One DJ sort of show that travelled about. Then we had the Hollies on the Rolf Harris show. Again, lovely colour footage. The Fortunes on the Vera Lynn show, and she joined in, and that was really good. To see her joining in, singing with those guys. That was really good. So that Vera Lynn show, it says here, 3rd of December '69. Um, Probably originally, well, it must have been originally colour, but black and white copy that survived. Sailor from Look Alive, 6th of January '76. He had Stephanie de Sykes as one of the DJs or one of the links in that, so that was interesting. Bob Kerr's Whoopee Band from Showtime in '78. I remember Bob Kerr was shown at, I think, another Kaleidoscope do, Alan Price and Lulu and all that kind of, they played in that kind of era. So that was a fun thing to have. The Tremolos, Top of the Pop surviving footage. So that was interesting. There was a colour clip. It was obviously from a documentary, and then they cut to black and white footage of the Tremolos doing "Silence Is Golden" from the what's it say here? The 18th of May, 1967. So little clips of that, and it's always fascinating. I always like looking at the audience. I always like to see what they're wearing and the way that they're dancing and stuff like that. So it was really good to see that. I knew of its existence, but I hadn't seen it before, so that was great. And then you had the Trems on with Vera Lynn, joining in with that. She was having great fun, great chemistry between them. So that was a really fun thing to see. Trini Lopez from the '70s. I Had a Hammer Bloke doing Vera Lynn in colour. So I haven't seen that before. Mud from Look Alive. Again, Mud are always a great fun sort of band, so I enjoyed seeing that. Ian Anderson, especially for Chris Perry, Kaleidoscope CEO man. So enjoyed that. Doing a solo thing on the Leo Sayer show, which I remember watching sort of mid-80s, BBC Two, I believe. Dusty Springfield then, a nice colour number from the Rolf Harris show, so it's great. Another nice little thing for the Dusty fans. And then we had Frankie Goes to Hollywood. So very 80s. There's kind of an 80s vibe to the whole sort of conference, the whole day, as it were. So it's interesting to see that. So I hope that's given a good little flavour of what the day was all about. And there's probably lots of things I've forgotten, but I can do a follow up video, and you can mention it in the comments. And found a few press releases and things like that, and videos and things which I can add at a later date. So that's enough for me. Hope you enjoyed it. I've got various books on Amazon and eBay. If you could support me by having a look at those. So if you just search Kevin Mulrennan, that's MULRENNAN on eBay or Amazon. I've got, alongside writing friends and partner Tony Reese, I've got a selection of books that we write together there, and I hope you'll enjoy that. So thanks for that. And if you attended the event and you've got some more comments, or I've made some mistakes, or I've left anything out, then please put them in the comments. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.